Welcome back to Silent Soul, where we bring true haunted stories that'll creep into your mind. Today, we'll share 6 creepy trucker horror stories that'll give you nightmares. But before we get started, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Let's hit the haunted road. My name is Ethan, and I used to be a long-haul trucker, hauling freight across the Midwest for a living. It was a lonely job, but it paid well, and I needed the money to keep my sister, Mia, in school after our mom passed away. I'd been driving for years, seen every kind of weird thing on the road deer that appeared out of nowhere. Creepy rest stops, drivers high on who knows what. But nothing prepared me for what happened on Route 93 in Nevada, on a stretch of highway they call the Devil's Backbone. After that night, I sold my rig and swore I'd never drive again. Route 93 is a desolate road, cutting through miles of desert with nothing but sagebrush and stars for company. Truckers talk about it in diners, swapping stories about strange lights, missing time, and hitchhikers who vanish by morning. I didn't believe those stories. I figured they were just tired drivers spinning yarns to pass the time. But in the summer of 2023, I learned better. It was late August, and I was hauling a load of electronics from Reno to Vegas, a run I'd done 100 times. The rain was coming down hard, unusual for the desert, turning the road slick and the air heavy. My CB radio was quiet, just static, and my headlights barely cut through the downpour. Around 2 a.m. halfway through the Devil's Backbone, a 50-mile stretch with no towns, no gas stations, just empty road. That's when I saw her. She was standing on the shoulder, thumb out, wearing a white dress that clung to her from the rain. No jacket, no bag, just her, soaked and pale under my headlights. I slowed down, my gut telling me to keep going, but she looked young, maybe 20, and I couldn't leave her out there. I pulled over, the rig's brakes hissing, and leaned across to open the passenger door. "You okay?" I called, shouting over the rain. She didn't answer, just climbed in, dripping water onto the seat. Her hair was dark, plastered to her face, and her eyes were wide, like she'd seen something awful. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, almost lost in the storm. "I need to get to Tonopah." Tonopah was 70 miles north, the wrong direction for me, but I figured I could drop her at the next gas station. Maybe call someone for her. "What's your name?" I asked, pulling back onto the road. "Clara," she said, staring out the window. Her hands were folded in her lap, her fingers twitching, like she was nervous. I noticed her dress was old-fashioned, like something from the 70s, with lace at the collar. Weird, but I'd seen stranger things on the road. "You from around here?" I asked, trying to make conversation. The rain was louder now, hammering the windshield, and the wipers were barely keeping up. She didn't answer, just kept staring out the window. Then, in a low voice, she said, "You shouldn't have stopped." I glanced at her, my stomach tightening. "What do you mean?" Her head turned slowly, and her eyes met mine. They were wrong too dark, like they didn't reflect the dashboard lights. "They're watching us," she whispered. "They always watch." I gripped the wheel, my heart pounding. "Who's watching?" She didn't answer, just pointed at the road ahead. My headlights caught something shapes in the rain, tall and thin, standing just off the shoulder. They weren't people, not really. Their limbs were too long, their heads too small, like shadows stretched wrong. I slammed on the brakes, the rig skidding, but when I looked again, they were gone. "You saw them," Clara said, her voice calm now, like she'd expected it. "They've been waiting for you." I laughed, nervous, trying to shake it off. "It's just the rain, playing tricks." "You're freaking me out, kid." She didn't smile. "They're not tricks. They're here for you, Ethan." I froze. I hadn't told her my name. "How do you know who I am?" I asked, my voice shaking. She turned back to the window. "I've been here a long time." I know everyone who drives this road. I wanted to pull over, tell her to get out, but the rain was too heavy, the road too dark. I kept driving, my hands sweaty on the wheel. The CB crackled, spitting static. Then a voice came through, not a trucker, not anyone I knew. It was low, guttural, saying my name over and over. Ethan, Ethan, Ethan. I turned the CB off, but the voice kept going, echoing in the cab. Clara was humming now, a tune I didn't recognize, soft and eerie, like a lullaby from a nightmare. The shapes appeared again, closer this time, standing in the middle of the road. I swerved, the rig fishtailing, and Clara laughed, a sharp, cold sound that made my skin crawl. "Stop it," I shouted, glancing at her. Her face was different now, paler, her eyes blacker, her mouth stretched into a grin that was too wide. "What are you?" She didn't answer, just kept humming. The shapes were everywhere now, lining the road, their heads tilted, watching. My headlights flickered, then went out, plunging us into darkness. The engine sputtered, the rig slowing, and I could hear them whispers, not from Clara, but from outside, from the shapes, saying my name. I don't know how I kept driving. The rain stopped, sudden and unnatural, and the silence was worse. Clara leaned closer, her breath cold against my ear. "They want you," she said, "but I can save you. Just stay with me." I slammed on the brakes, the rig shuddering to a stop. "Get out," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled, her teeth sharp in the dark. "You can't leave me, Ethan. You're part of the road now." The door opened on its own, and she was gone, like she'd never been there. The seat was dry, no trace of water, no sign of her. The shapes were gone too, but the whispers stayed, echoing in my head. I drove until dawn, my hands shaking, until I hit a gas station outside Tanoba. The clerk, an old guy with a limp, saw my face and asked what happened. "Don't pick up hitchhikers on 93, I said, my voice hoarse. "Not at night." He nodded, like he'd heard it before. "Clara, right? She's been out there since the 70s. Car accident. Killed her and her family. They say she's looking for someone to take her place." I didn't go back to Route 93. I sold my rig, moved Maya to a cheaper school, and got a job at a warehouse in Omaha. But when it rains, I hear her humming, feel her breath on my neck. And sometimes, in the dark, I see them, those shapes standing at the edge of my vision. My name is Nate, and I used to be a long-haul trucker, hauling freight across the West for a living. It was a lonely job, but it kept my brother, Kyle, in rehab after years of struggling with addiction. I'd seen plenty of strange things on the road, odd hitchhikers, deserted rest stops, storms that felt alive, but I always chalked them up to long hours and too much coffee. That changed one rainy night on Highway 50 in Utah, a stretch they call the loneliest road in America. After what happened there, I sold my rig and swore I'd never drive at night again. Highway 50 is desolate, cutting through miles of desert with nothing but dust and mountains for company. Truckers talk about it in hushed tones, sharing stories of phantom passengers, radios that play dead voices, and shadows that follow you. I didn't believe those tales. I was focused on getting my loads delivered and keeping Kyle clean. But in October 2024, I learned that some roads don't let you go. I was hauling a load of medical supplies from Salt Lake City to Reno, a long run with a tight schedule. The rain was pouring, unusual for Utah, turning the road into a slick black ribbon. My CB radio was quiet, just static, and my headlights struggled to pierce the downpour. Around 3 Omaha, I was deep in the loneliest road. No towns, no lights, just me and the storm. That's when I saw him. He was standing on the shoulder, his thumb out, wearing a dark jacket and a wide-brimmed hat, soaked from the rain. He looked like any other hitchhiker, but something about him made my skin crawl. I don't usually pick up strangers, but Kyle's face kept flashing in my mind. How he'd been stranded once, needing help. I slowed the rig, the brakes hissing, and opened the passenger door. Need a lift? I called, shouting over the rain. He didn't say anything, just climbed in, water dripping from his hat onto the seat. His face was shadowed, his eyes hidden under the brim. Thanks, he said, his voice low, like it was coming from far away, heading to Ely. Ely was 60 miles west on my route, so I nodded and pulled back onto the road. What's your name? I asked, trying to break the silence. He didn't answer, just stared out the window, his hands folded in his lap. His jacket was old, worn leather, and his boots were caked with mud, leaving smears on the floor. The cab felt colder with him in it, the air heavy, like the storm was inside. I turned up the heat, but it didn't help. You from around here? I tried again, glancing at him. His hat was tilted, hiding his face, but I could feel him watching me. You shouldn't stop for strangers, he said, his voice sharper now, like a warning. Not on this road. I laughed, nervous, gripping the wheel. Just being a good guy, I said. He turned then, and I saw his face pale, too pale, with eyes that were wrong, like black marbles, no whites, just darkness. Good guys don't last here, he said, and his mouth stretched into a grin that was too wide, showing teeth that weren't right. I slammed on the brakes, the rig skidding, but he didn't move, didn't even flinch. What the hell are you? I shouted, my heart pounding. He didn't answer, just kept grinning, his eyes locked on mine. The CB crackled, spitting static, and a voice came through, not his, but a woman's, soft and sad. Nate, she said, don't let him stay. I hadn't used my name, hadn't said a word on the radio. I turned it off, but the voice kept going, joined by others, whispering, chanting my name. The passenger leaned closer, his breath cold and sour, like old blood. They're waiting for you, he said. In the back. I checked my mirrors, and my blood ran cold. The trailer was dark, but there were shapes inside moving, shifting, like people standing among the crates. The trailer shook, a low rumble, like something heavy was pacing back there. I heard knocking now, slow at first, then faster, coming from the trailer walls, the roof, the floor. I floored the gas, the rig roaring, but the knocking didn't stop. The headlights flickered, and the passenger laughed, a low, guttural sound that made my ears ache. You can't outrun us, he said. This road's ours. I saw them then, in the mirror's figures on the highway, standing in the rain, their eyes black like his, their faces twisted. They were everywhere, lining the road, keeping pace with the truck. The trailer shook harder, the knocking turning into banging, like something was trying to break out. The smell got worse, thick and choking, like death itself was in the cab. I thought of Kyle, how I'd promised to get him through rehab, how I couldn't leave him alone. It kept me going, kept my hands on the wheel. But the passenger was closer now, his face inches from mine, his eyes swallowing the light. Join us, he said, his voice echoing in my skull. Stay on the road. The truck stalled, the engine dead, the headlights out. The rain stopped, and the silence was worse, heavy and suffocating. The figures were at the windows now, their hands pressing against the glass, their faces blurred, but their eyes clear, black and endless. The passenger grabbed my arm, his grip like ice, and I felt it something pulling me, not just my body but my mind, like he was trying to drag me somewhere else. I screamed, swinging my flashlight, but it passed through him, and he laughed again, louder, sharper. The trailer doors burst open. I heard the metal groan, even from the cab, and the banging stopped. The figures were inside now, their shadows filling the mirrors, reaching for me. The woman's voice came again, from the CB, from the air, everywhere. Help us, Nate, she said. We're trapped. I don't know how I got out. The engine roared back to life, the headlights flared, and I drove, the figures fading as the sky lightened. I pulled into a truck stop outside Ely, my hands shaking, my clothes soaked with sweat. The trailer was empty, but the walls were scratched, deep and jagged, like something had clawed its way out. I told the clerk, an old woman with tired eyes, what happened. Loneliest road, she said, nodding. Back in '68, a trucker disappeared out there, rig and all. They say he's still on 50, picking up passengers who never leave. I quit that day, sold my rig, and moved Kyle to a rehab center in Denver. I work at a warehouse now, far from the highways. But when it rains, I hear them, the knocking, the voices, his laugh. And sometimes, at night, I see those black eyes in the dark, watching, waiting for me to drive back to Highway 50. My name is Hannah, and I used to be a long-haul trucker, hauling freight across the Rockies for a living. It was a tough job, but it was the only way to keep my younger brother, Ben, in school after our parents died in a car accident. I'd driven every kind of road mountain passes, desert highways, backwoods routes, and seen plenty of strange things. Animals that vanished, radios picking up static voices, rest stops that felt wrong. But nothing scared me like what happened on Route 191 in Montana, a stretch truckers call the Ghost Run. After that night, I sold my rig and swore I'd never drive again. Route 191 is a lonely road winding through Montana's mountains, with cliffs on one side and valleys on the other. Truckers whisper about it at diners, sharing stories of flickering lights, screams in the wind, and drivers who never make it to the next town. I thought it was just talk, the kind of thing you tell to pass the time. But in December 2024, I found out the Ghost Run lives up to its name. I was hauling a load of lumber from Billings to Missoula, a grueling run through snow and rain. The storm was bad that night, rain mixing with sleet, making the road a slick nightmare. My CB radio was on, but it was quiet, just the hiss of static and the groan of my wipers. Around 2 a.m, I was deep in the mountains, miles from any town, when I saw them lights in the distance, flickering like candles, floating above the road. At first, I thought they were headlights, maybe another truck coming my way, but they didn't move like headlights. They danced, weaving in and out, sometimes splitting apart, sometimes merging. I slowed down, my hands tight on the wheel, trying to make sense of it. The CB crackled, and a voice came through, not a trucker's, not human. It was high, sharp, like a child's scream stretched thin. "Hannah," it said, "follow the lights." I hadn't used my name, hadn't spoken to anyone in hours. I turned the CB off, but the voice kept going, looping my name, getting louder. "Hannah, follow us." My headlights dimmed, like something was draining them, and the lights on the road got brighter, closer, pulsing like they were alive. I sped up, trying to outrun them, but they kept pace, hovering just ahead of the truck. Then I heard it a low hum, like a swarm of bees, coming from the trailer. I checked my mirrors, but the rain and darkness hid everything. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the cab, and I felt it in my chest, like it was trying to crawl inside me. The lights were everywhere now, circling the truck, darting in and out of the trees. I saw shapes in them faces, blurred and wrong, with eyes that glowed too bright, mouths open in silent screams. I thought of Ben, how he was counting on me, how I promised to get him through college. It kept my foot on the gas, kept me from pulling over, but the hum turned into whispers, voices overlapping, saying things I couldn't understand except for my name. "Hannah, stay with us." The trailer shook, like something heavy was moving back there, and I heard scratching, like nails on wood, coming from the cargo. I checked the mirrors again, and my heart stopped. There was a figure in the trailer, just a shadow, tall and thin, standing among the lumber. Its head was tilted, its eyes glowing like the lights outside. I slammed on the brakes, the rig skidding on the wet road, but the figure didn't move. The whispers got louder, the lights closer, and the CB screamed. Static mixed with voices, a child, a woman, a man, all chanting my name. I floored it, the rig groaning, but the trailer felt heavy, like I was pulling a mountain. The scratching was louder now, and the smell hit me rotting wood, wet earth, and something sharp like blood. The lights were inside the cab now, floating around me, their faces clearer pale, twisted, with hollow eyes and mouths that moved without sound. "Join us," they whispered, their voices like knives in my ears. The figure appeared in the passenger seat, its body bent wrong, its face inches from mine. It wasn't human, not anymore, just a shell of skin and bone, its eyes burning into me. "You're ours," it said, its voice echoing in my skull. I screamed, swerving, the rig nearly sliding off the cliff. The trailer shook harder, the scratching turning into banging, like something was breaking through. The engine sputtered, the headlights flickered, and the rain stopped, leaving a silence that was worse than the storm. The lights were everywhere, filling the cab, the road, the sky. I felt them pulling me, not just my body but my mind, like they wanted to drag me somewhere else. I thought of Ben, his smile, his hope, and I fought, gripping the wheel, praying for the road to end. I don't know how I made it. The engine roared back to life, the headlights flared, and I drove, the lights fading as dawn broke. I pulled into a truck stop outside Missoula, my hands trembling, my clothes soaked with sweat. The trailer was empty, but the lumber was scratched, deep gashes like claw marks, and the air smelled like death. I told the clerk, an old man with a scarred face, what happened. "Ghost run," he said, not looking surprised. Back in '59, a logging truck crashed on 191, whole crew gone. They say their lights are still out there, looking for someone to carry their load. I quit that day, sold my rig, and moved Ben to a cheaper school in Bozeman. I work at a hardware store now, far from the roads. But when it rains, I hear them, the hum, the whispers, the scratching. And sometimes, at night, I see those lights in the dark, circling, waiting for me to drive back to Route 191. My name is Derek, and I used to drive a semi-truck across the Midwest, hauling cargo from Kansas City to Denver. It was a grueling job, but it was all I had to keep my mom in her nursing home after her dementia got bad. I'd been a trucker for 15 years, seen my share of weird stuff, strange hitchhikers, lights in the sky, rest stops that felt wrong. But nothing scared me like what happened on Interstate 70 in Kansas one rainy night. After that, I traded my rig for a desk job and vowed never to touch a highway again. I-70 is a long, lonely stretch through Kansas, flat as a tabletop, with fields stretching out forever under a sky that feels too heavy. Truckers call it the Whispering Way because of the stories, voices in the wind, shadows in the mirrors, trailers that carry more than cargo. I thought it was all talk, the kind of thing drivers make up to spook newbies. But in September 2024, I found out the truth. I was hauling a load of car parts from Missouri to Colorado, a rush job with a tight deadline. The rain was coming down hard, turning the road into a mirror of black asphalt. My CB radio was on, but it was quiet, just the hum of static and the steady slap of my wipers. Around 3 mi, I was deep in western Kansas, miles from the nearest town, and I heard it, a faint whisper, like someone talking just behind my seat. I pulled over, the rig's brakes hissing, and grabbed my flashlight. The sleeper was empty, just my duffel bag and a folded blanket. But the air was cold, colder than it should have been, and there was a smell, faint but sharp, like damp earth and something sour. I checked the trailer next, unlocking the back doors. The car parts were there, strapped down, but the shadows seemed wrong, too dark, like they were moving on their own. I got back in the cab, my hands shaking, and started driving again. The whispering grew louder, more voices now, overlapping, saying things I couldn't make out. "Derek, stay with us." I turned the radio back on, hoping to drown it out, but it was worse static mixed with voices, not truckers, but something else, chanting my name. The road ahead was empty, the rain heavier, and my headlights started flickering, like something was draining them. Then I saw it in the side mirror, a figure in the trailer, just a silhouette, sitting among the crates. It was tall, too tall to be human. Its head bent at a weird angle, like it was trying to fit. I slammed on the brakes, the rig skidding, and checked the mirror again. Nothing, but the whispering was louder now, coming from all around me, inside the cab, inside my head. I kept driving, my heart pounding, telling myself it was exhaustion, that I'd been on the road too long. But the trailer felt heavy, like I was pulling something more than car parts. The whispers turned into words, clear and cold. "You can't leave us, Derek," they said. "You belong here." I thought of my mom, how she'd raised me alone, how I was all she had left. It kept me going, kept my foot on the gas. But then the tapping started soft at first, like fingers on metal, coming from the trailer. It got louder, faster, like something was banging to get out. I checked my mirrors again, and there it was, the figure. Closer now, pressed against the trailer's back window, its face just a shadow with two glowing white eyes. I screamed, swerving, the rig nearly tipping. The headlights went out, the engine sputtering, and the whispers turned into a chorus, loud and shrill, like 100 voices screaming my name. I felt something touch my shoulder, cold and wet, like a hand made of rain. I turned, and it was there, in the passenger seat, a thing, not a person, its body twisted, its eyes burning, its mouth open in a silent scream. "Stay," it said, its voice echoing in my skull. "Stay with us?" I don't know how I kept driving. The road was gone, just darkness and rain, but I floored it, praying for a sign, a town, anything. The trailer shook, like something was tearing it apart from the inside, and the banging was so loud, drowned out the storm. I saw them in the mirrors, more figures, crawling over the trailer, their eyes glowing, their hands clawing at the metal. The CB screamed, a burst of static, and a new voice came through a woman's, soft and pleading. "Help us, Derek," she said. "We're trapped." I looked back, and the trailer was full of them shapes, human but wrong, their faces blurred, their eyes white, reaching for me through the glass. The rig stalled, the engine dead, and the rain stopped, leaving a silence that hurt my ears. The figures were everywhere, surrounding the truck, their hands pressed against the windows, their whispers filling the cab. I grabbed my tire iron, ready to fight, but then the headlights snapped back on, and the engine roared to life. I drove until dawn, the figures fading as the sky lightened. I pulled into a truck stop outside Salina, my hands shaking, my clothes soaked with sweat. The trailer was empty, but the walls were scratched, deep and jagged, like something had tried to claw its way out. I told the cashier, an old guy with a trucker hat, what happened. "Whispering Way," he said, nodding. "Happened in '82. A trucker vanished out there. Whole load gone. They say his cargo wasn't cargo souls, trapped in the trailer, looking for a new driver. I quit that day, sold my rig, and moved Mom to a cheaper nursing home in Topeka. I work at a gas station now, safe from the road. But when it rains, I hear them. The whispers, the tapping, the woman's voice. And sometimes at night, I see those white eyes. My name is Jenna, and I used to be a long-haul trucker, hauling freight across the Great Plains for a living. It was a tough gig, but it paid for my daughter Sophie's medical bills after she got sick. I'd been driving for years, used to the solitude, the endless roads, the weird stuff you see at 3 a.m. shadows that move too fast, voices on the CB that don't make sense. But nothing prepared me for what I encountered on Highway 281 in North Dakota, at a lonely mile marker they call the Widow's Post. After that night, I quit trucking and swore I'd never touch a steering wheel again. Highway 281 is a quiet stretch, cutting through fields of wheat and sunflowers, with towns so small they're just a gas station and a bar. Truckers talk about the Widow's Post, mile marker 142, where strange things happen, lights that flicker, radios that scream, drivers who vanish. I thought it was just road talk, stories to scare rookies. But in November 2024, I learned the truth. I was hauling a load of grain from Fargo to Bismarck, a short run but urgent, with a storm rolling in. The rain was relentless, pounding my rig, making the road slick and the visibility near zero. My CB was on, but it was silent, just the crackle of static and the hum of my engine. Around 2 a.m. I was approaching mile marker 142, the Widow's Post, when I saw him, a man standing by the sign, his head down, his coat flapping in the wind. He was tall, dressed in an old-fashioned duster coat, like something from a western. I slowed down, thinking he might be stranded, but my gut told me to keep going. Nobody stands on a highway in a storm like that, not at this hour. I flashed my headlights, and he raised his head. His face was wrong pale, almost glowing, with eyes that were just dark pits, like they'd been carved out. I hit the gas, the rig lurching forward, but he didn't move, just stood there, watching me pass. I checked my mirrors, and he was gone, but the air in the cab felt heavy, like someone was breathing down my neck. The CB crackled, and a voice came through low, slow, saying my name. Jenna. I hadn't used my name, hadn't talked to anyone all night. I turned the radio off, but the voice kept going, louder now. Jenna, come back. My hands were shaking, but I kept driving, telling myself it was the storm, the exhaustion. I'd been pushing hard to pay for Sophie's treatments, barely sleeping. But then I heard a knock on the passenger door, sharp and deliberate, like someone wanted in. I glanced over, my flashlight beam cutting through the dark, but there was nothing, just rain streaming down the window. The knocking moved to the back of the cab, then the trailer, loud and insistent, like something was pounding to get out. I checked my mirrors again, and there he was standing in the middle of the road, miles from where I'd seen him, his coat flapping, his eyes empty. I swerved, the rig skidding, the trailer swaying dangerously. The knocking turned into banging, shaking the whole truck, and the CB screamed, static mixed with voices. Not one, but many, chanting my name. Jenna, Jenna, Jenna. I thought of Sophie, lying in her hospital bed, waiting for me to come home. It was the only thing keeping me sane, keeping my foot on the gas. The banging got louder, and I could smell it now, something rank, like wet leather and decay, filling the cab. The headlights flickered, and the man appeared again, closer, standing right in front of the truck. I slammed on the brakes, the rig screeching to a stop, but he was gone, like he'd never been there. The voices on the CB changed, softer now, a woman's voice, pleading. "Help us, Jenna," she said. "We're stuck here." I looked in the rearview mirror, and the trailer was full of Shadow's figures, hunched and twisted, their eyes dark like his, moving closer. The banging was deafening, like they were tearing the trailer apart from the inside. I floored it, the rig roaring back to life, but the road felt wrong, like it was looping, taking me back to the Widow's Post. A mile marker appeared again, 142, glowing in the dark, and he was there, standing by it, his head tilted, his mouth open in a silent scream. The trailer shook, the banging so loud it hurt my ears, and I felt something cold touch my arm, like fingers wrapping around me. "Stay with us," the man's voice said. Not from the CB, but from inside the cab, right behind me. I turned, and he was there, sitting in the passenger seat, his face inches from mine, his eyes swallowing the light. I screamed, swinging my flashlight, but it passed through him, and he laughed a sound like breaking glass. The truck stalled, the engine dead, the headlights out. The rain stopped, and the silence was worse, heavy and suffocating. The figures were everywhere now, pressing against the windows, their hands smearing the glass with something dark and wet. I grabbed my phone, trying to call for help, but the screen was blank, just static. The man leaned closer, his breath cold and foul. "You're ours now," he said. I don't know how I got out. The engine roared back to life. The headlights flared, and I drove, the figures fading as the sky lightened. I pulled into a truck stop outside Bismarck, my hands trembling, my clothes soaked with sweat. The trailer was empty, but the walls were scratched, deep and uneven, like something had clawed at them. I told the cashier, an old man with a weathered face, what happened. "Widow's post," he said, shaking his head. "Back in '73, a trucker crashed there. Whole family with him. They say he's still out there, looking for someone to take his place on the road." I quit that day, sold my rig, and moved Sophie to a hospital in Fargo. I work at a diner now, far from the highways. But when it rains, I hear it, the knocking, the voices, his laugh. And sometimes, at night, I see those dark eyes in the shadows, waiting for me to drive back to mile marker 142. My name is Caleb, and I used to drive a semi-truck across the Midwest, hauling freight from Iowa to Wyoming. It was a tough job, but it kept me and my son, Dylan, afloat after my wife left us. I loved the open road, the way it made you feel free, even if it was lonely. I'd heard all the trucker stories, ghostly hitchhikers, phantom lights, but I never believed them. I'm a practical guy. I trusted my rig, my map, and my gut. But something happened on Interstate 80 in Nebraska, one rainy night that changed everything. Now, I can't even look at a truck without feeling like I'm being watched. I-80 is a long, straight stretch through Nebraska, flanked by endless fields and the occasional grain silo. Truckers call it the Ghost Corridor because of the stories drivers disappearing, radios picking up voices that don't belong. I thought it was nonsense, just tired folks seeing shadows. But in October 2024, I found out how wrong I was. I was hauling a load of frozen beef from Des Moines to Cheyenne, a routine run I'd done dozens of times. The weather was bad rain pouring down, turning the road into a slick ribbon of asphalt. My CB radio was on, but it was quiet, just the hiss of static and the rhythmic thump of my wipers. Around 3 MAR, I hit a patch of fog so thick it swallowed my headlights, forcing me to slow to a crawl. The road was empty. No other trucks, no cars, just me and the rain. That's when I saw a figure standing in the middle of the highway, barely visible through the fog. It was tall, lanky, wearing what looked like an old trucker's jacket, the kind with reflective strips. I slammed on the brakes, the rig shuddering, expecting to hear a thud, but there was nothing. The figure was gone, like it had dissolved into the fog. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe a deer or a signpost. I kept driving, my hands tight on the wheel, but the fog got worse, thicker, until I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The CB crackled, spitting out a voice, not a trucker's, not anyone I knew. It was low, gravelly, saying, "Caleb, turn around." I froze. I hadn't given my name on the radio, hadn't spoken to anyone all night. I turned the CB off, but the voice kept going, repeating, "Caleb, turn around." I checked my mirrors, my side windows, but there was nothing but fog. Then I heard it a tapping on the passenger window, slow and deliberate, like someone knocking to get in. I leaned over, my flashlight shaking, and shone it outside. Nothing, just fog and rain. But the tapping continued, moving to the back of the cab, then the roof, like something was crawling over my truck. I floored it, the rig groaning as I pushed through the fog. The voice on the CB got louder, angrier. "You can't leave, Caleb. You're ours." I glanced at the passenger seat, and for a split second, I saw him a man, or something like one, sitting there. His face was burned, his eyes hollow, his jacket scorched and torn. He grinned, his teeth black and jagged, and then he was gone. I swerved, the rig fishtailing, nearly jackknifing into the ditch. The fog seemed to press against the windows, like it was alive, trying to get in. I heard footsteps now, heavy and uneven, pacing alongside the truck, keeping up no matter how fast I went. My headlights caught glimpses of shapes in the fog, tall, thin figures, their heads tilted, their arms too low. They were everywhere, lining the road, watching me. I don't know why, but I started talking to Dylan, like he could hear me. "I'm coming home, buddy," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not letting them take me." I thought about him, alone at home, waiting for me to send his tuition check. That kept me going, kept my foot on the gas. The CB screamed, a burst of static that made my ears ring, and then a new voice, a child's, soft and sad. "Don't leave us, Caleb," it said. "We're so cold." I looked in the rearview mirror, and there they were, figures in the trailer's shadow. Small ones holding hands, their faces blurred, but their eyes glowing like headlights. I screamed, swerving again, and the rig tilted, the wheels lifting off the ground. When I came to, I was parked at a rest stop, the engine off, the fog gone. The rain was soft now, pattering on the roof. My watch said 6 a.m., but I didn't remember stopping. The CB was silent, the cab empty, but my hands were covered in ash, and the air smelled like smoke. I checked the trailer empty, just like it should be, but there were scratches on the inside, deep and jagged, like something had tried to claw its way out. I drove straight to Cheyenne, dropped the load, and quit the next day. I sold my rig, moved Dylan to a community college closer to home, and got a job at a hardware store in Lincoln. But when it rains, I hear them, the voice, the tapping, the child's plea. And sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I see them in my rearview mirror, shapes in the fog, waiting for me to stop. I found out later from another trucker that I-80's got a history. Back in the 80s, a bus crashed there in a storm, killed a dozen people, including kids on a school trip. They say the fog traps them, keeps them on the road, looking for someone to join them. I don't know if that's true, but I know one thing: I'll never drive I-80 again.